Welcome to the Disability Rights Connecticut webinar series on using supported decision-making to advance employment outcomes for people with disabilities in Connecticut. I'm Tom Kosker, advocate at Disability Rights Connecticut, and the parent of a 17-year-old son with multiple disabilities. In this presentation, we are going to provide an overview of supported decision-making. You will hear directly from people with disabilities and their family members about supported decision-making. If you're interested in learning more, you can find clips from our interviews on the Disability Rights Connecticut website on our supported decision-making page at disrightsct.org/SDM or disrightsct.org/SDM. I want to briefly review what we will cover today. First, we will discuss what happens when an individual turns 18. Next, we will highlight some legal tools for decision-making support in Connecticut. We will then provide some details about supported decision-making, or SDM. Finally, we will discuss more specifically how supported decision-making works in Connecticut and in advancing employment. In Connecticut, when a person turns 18 years old, they become a legal adult. This means the law says they now get to make their own decisions about their healthcare, education, finances, and other personal matters. Parents are no longer allowed to automatically make the legal decisions for the person, even though they typically could do that all through their childhood. This is true even when the person has a disability and regardless of the type of disability. Within the school system, this is called transfer of rights and means the student now gets to make their own educational decisions. Having said that, there are options we will discuss for parents to support their child with decision-making, even after they turn 18. This transition period can be intimidating time for families, particularly when they don't know all options for supporting youth and young adults with disabilities in decision-making. That's why we want to help families learn more about these options so they and their loved ones can work together to choose the right path for them. I know that for me, as a parent of a child with a disability, it is a challenging and difficult time as my son moves toward his 18th birthday. What has been most helpful to me is to know and understand all the options that are available to us and what we can do to support him during this time of transition, while providing him with the independence to make decisions that are best for him. We will discuss some of these options now. Here are some of the main legal tools related to decision-making for adults in Connecticut. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are some key tools. You can learn more about them by reviewing the resources available on DRCT's website. Each of the tools on this slide may be needed under certain circumstances to support a person with a disability. However, we all need to appreciate that some of these tools are heavier than others when applied to a person. When an adult with a disability needs some support with decision-making, there can be a tendency for others to go too quickly down the list to the bottom, namely to treat court-appointed guardianship or conservatorship as the default. In Connecticut, the term guardian refers to a court-appointed decision-maker for certain adults with intellectual disabilities, and the term conservator refers to a court-appointed decision-maker for certain adults who do not have an intellectual disability or who have significant financial assets over $10,000. While there may be times guardianship or conservatorship is necessary, we need to recognize it as the heaviest tool because of what it does to a person's rights. It is a serious step to take and has legal consequences, not only for the person, but also to their family. It involves ongoing court involvement and oversight and can be difficult to end or change. Sometimes schools, doctors, state governmental agencies, adult service systems, healthcare providers, and banks say that guardianship or conservatorship is the only option for families. But that is not true. A person may need help making decisions, but that does not necessarily mean they need a guardian or conservator. We all need help making decisions sometimes. We encourage people to consider and explore other options first, including supported decision making. Effective July 1st, 2023, Connecticut enacted a law that formally recognizes supported decision making. It defines it as a tool that is utilized by a person with a disability to retain decision making authority through assistance from one or more persons of the individual's choosing in understanding the nature and consequences of potential personal and financial decisions and in communicating such decisions. But what is it? Supported decision making happens when people, including individuals with disabilities, make their own decisions with the help of people they pick and trust. Supporters can include family, friends, and professionals. Each person can decide on the amount of support they want and need with the help of their supporters. With supported decision making, supporters help the person understand the situations and choices that come up in life. They provide help, advice, and guidance so the individual can be the one to make the decision. Supported decision making is a flexible tool in that it can change over time, just like people's lives and circles of support change. We will show you some examples of people with disabilities using supported decision making later on in this video. To understand more about what supported decision making is, it can be helpful to understand what it is not. Supported decision making is not about someone else making decisions for a person or having the person only make the decision that the supporter wants them to. It is about enabling the person to make decisions for themselves. Importantly, it is also not about a person making decisions alone without any help. That's a recipe for making bad decisions. Instead, it's about providing information, guidance, and the help a person asks for so that they can make their own decisions. Finally, a common myth about supported decision making is that it can only be used by people with certain kinds of disabilities. That is also not accurate. A person's ability to use supported decision making is not determined by their IQ score or their diagnosis. We have supported people in using supported decision making who have intellectual disabilities, who have autism, who have psychiatric disabilities, who do not use speech to communicate, or who have dementia. The key to supported decision making is to ask yourself, what will it take to support a person in making decisions in that person's own life? Now we're going to show you a clip of a young man named Antonio and his mother, Mary, talking about how Antonio uses supported decision making.
Mom help me with decisions.
So when he has an interest, I usually ask Antonio, is that something you want to do more of? And knowing that he spends a big part of his day in school still, I reach out to the school and say, this is something this is a new hobby Antonio's picked up, or this is a new interest Antonio's picked up. Is there any way we can incorporate it? And the school does an excellent job with any interest he has or hobbies. He's really into bowling now, so that's one of the reward days they get on for the Friday. The kids get to go bowling. So when COVID happened, Antonio spent the majority of his time, shutdown time at my house. It's very isolating. And so I was fortunate that I have friends who had children who were of Antonio's age or older. And when regulations started lightening up a little bit, they would come over and spend time with him. And we would have activities. And um, it started off with school activities. And then it started off with a lot more social stuff. And then they just became great friends. The peer mentors actually realized that they have more in common with him than they thought they would. And so it's just grown. You've met them. And by allowing him with these, they're really friends. So, we've encouraged over the years, and you've seen the growth. So if they go out to eat, I get a table, not with them. I'm at the next table. And I just tell, the waitress, yeah, I'm paying for them. Here's my card. Let them order what they want. I try not to be like right there as the mom with the friends. And that has encouraged him to open up conversation. His language exploded through that process. It just exploded. He speaks way more now that he's been hanging around with typical peers than prior. So, that language development has been huge. Um, and it's just, and you've seen the change in him. He's matured. He has appropriate role models, and they talk about typical things. I utilize them for my own purposes sometimes, the peer mentors, like I said, just to find out what is Antonio's thoughts or feelings. Sometimes they're doing a transitional assessment for Antonio and maybe they're not sure what his interests are. So I'll ask the peer mentors, I'll give them some guided questions and that are aligned with the transitional assessment. And they'll give me that feedback and I'll be able to share that with the school. He's more vocal about what he wants, what he doesn't want. Even when I'm signing a document, even when I signed the document for the release for today, I read it with him. I made sure he understood. And I said, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. Even though mommy can sign it, if you don't want to do it, he says, no, I'll try, which I think he did an excellent job. So his understanding that he has choice has grown a lot. And that's a message that his outside providers enforce. I've asked them to enforce. His peers have enforced because I want him to understand that he does have choice, that he's 20 years old, he'll be 21 years old, and he has to voice his choice appropriately. And he's done that. He's done that at the transitional academy. He's done that when certain jobs weren't what he wanted to do. You saw him at his birthday party. He said, I don't want anybody to sing happy birthday to me. And so nobody sang happy birthday. We just listened to the candle. He said, I really don't want no one to sing happy birthday. And we said, okay, we're going to respect your choice. And I told everybody, Tony does not want anybody to sing happy birthday. And nobody sang happy birthday. So, I mean, I value his choice because for a long time he didn't have language to express his choice. And so when he says something, we listen. And he knows it.
So we learned in this video that Antonio uses supported decision-making to help articulate his decisions in a number of areas of his life, including employment. Mary shared how for a long time, Antonio didn't have the language to communicate his preferences and choices, but that his vocabulary and ability to articulate his choices and decisions exploded when he became more integrated with his peers. Antonio's supporters, including his mother and his peer mentors, helped him identify his interests and advocate for those interests and preferences to be implemented and respected. That's supported decision making. It's all about helping someone make decisions rooted in their own preferences and honoring those preferences and decisions. Now, maybe you are thinking, my loved one has different needs than Antonio. Maybe they're not able to use speech to be understood and instead communicate through behaviors and gestures. But regardless of a person's level of support need, they can use and benefit from supported decision making. You may remember in the video that Mary said that Antonio's language grew tenfold when he was better integrated and connected with his peers, that his speech was limited before. I've had a similar experience with my son. He's 17 years old and has a variety of support needs, including needing help with communication. As a result of his disabilities, he at times struggles with with using his voice to communicate. However, throughout his life, he has always been able to communicate his desires, his interests, and his choices one way or another. What we have all learned in our ongoing support of our son is the importance of listening to his desires and ensuring that he chooses what he wants in life. As he moves forward toward life after high school, he is at the center of decisions about what that will look like. He expresses his desire to go to college and to work. His strong interest in cars and trucks will help guide the choices he makes about where he will be at the center of making those decisions with support from us. What is important to remember is that there is no one way to use or practice supported decision making. It will look different for different people, but it is an option for every person with a disability. We have talked about the what of supported decision making. Now let's talk about the why. Decision making is a learned skill. Decision making is like a muscle. The more you use it, the better you get at making decisions. Think back to when you were 18. Maybe you didn't always make the best decisions. But over time, we learn from our mistakes and are guided by people we know and trust to help us develop the skills to make better decisions. Too often, people with disabilities are not given the option to make their own decisions, which means they don't get the chance to learn and practice this skill. Guardianship and conservatorship can take away a person's ability to develop this skill further, since a guardian is the ultimate decision maker. People with disabilities should be given the opportunity to develop and grow their decision-making skills over time. We've seen that through stories like Antonio's, through integration and support, youth can expand their vocabulary and better communicate their preferences and choices across time. Again, as my son has grown, matured, and developed as a young adult, so has his ability to make decisions with support. One way we have supported him in this area is by providing him with the opportunity to explore his areas of interest. We have facilitated his exposure to what it would be like to work with cars and trucks by having him go to a local body shop to help out. With support, he has helped with various functions at the shop where he can show his interests and abilities on different tasks. By watching and listening to him, we can support him as he learns about and expresses his choices on what working on cars might look like for him. In the end, it will be his choice, but our support over time gives him the knowledge and understanding he needs to make the decisions. Self-determination is linked to better life outcomes. Studies show that people who exercise greater self-determination, who are in control and actors in their own lives, experience better life outcomes. They are more likely to live independently and be integrated in the community. They are more likely to be employed in better paying jobs, and they are more likely to identify situations where they could face abuse and less likely to suffer abuse. That makes sense for a couple of reasons. First, when you teach someone that their opinion and voice matters, they are more likely to stand up for themselves in a situation where someone might try to take advantage of them. Second, the more integrated a person is in the community, the more people they interact with and the less isolated they are. The more people they interact with, the more people they can see and know when something is wrong. The idea is that people keep people safe. And the more integrated someone is, the more connected they are to the communities that can protect them. What's important to remember about self-determination is that it can be fostered over time with supports. For example, supporters can help people with disabilities develop the skills that they need to understand the different types of employment options available. Engage them in making everyday choices that grow in complexity over time, and help them learn how to interact with support staff and ask for help when they need it. Just like Antonio taught us in his video, promoting self-determination is often about finding ways to support people to build the skills and supports they need to get where they want to go. Also, many young adults with disabilities, with the help of their families and others they trust, apply for Social Security benefits upon turning 18. When people turn 18, their parents' income no longer negatively impacts their financial eligibility for supplemental security income, or SSI. Supporters can also help someone navigate federal work incentives that allow them to keep their Medicaid and SSI benefits even while they are working. Most people, including those with disabilities, use the concepts of supported decision-making to help them make decisions, from day-to-day to more involved and complex decisions. As family members of people with disabilities, we are always helping them with the decisions they make from the time they are born. This help varies widely based on their age, their need for assistance, and the type of decisions being made. The key component of whatever level of support family provides is keeping the individual at the center of the decisions. In this video clip, Mary, Antonio's mother, provides advice to parents and families about what they should know about giving their child opportunities and keeping them at the center of the decision-making process. Let's listen in.
I would say really let the child choose. One of my things with Antonio is that people ask me, well, will he do this? Will he be able to do this? And I said, I don't know, but I'm going to afford him the opportunity to show me if he can or not. And so I think it all lies in just providing as many opportunities you can and see where your child steps up to the challenge and what they can do and help foster that. I mean, there's no one size fits all. Antonio's like any other typical teenager or 20-year-old who, I like this today and tomorrow I don't like it. Um, and so, I don't force anything on him. I try to, I don't like him to give up early, but my advice would be just to provide opportunities, multiple opportunities, and let your child show you or demonstrate the choice that they want, and then hear them.
Using these SDM concepts, or a more formal SDM agreement, if appropriate, can help keep people with disabilities in charge of their lives and lead them to be happier with the path they've chosen. This can also be another way to help someone navigate various government supports and benefits, such as Social Security and work programs and incentives, by providing them with the circle of support they need to access those benefits and services. Another great aspect of SDM is including and engaging in a meaningful way other people who play important roles in the life of people with disabilities. Friends, extended family members, and community members can be key parts of a supported decision-making team. Again, this can be more or less formal, depending on the situation, but being deliberate about including others will grow their circle of support. It will help grow the village that will support them throughout their lives. And this decision-making support can be in combination with or in place of other options, such as guardianship or conservatorship, that are already in place or are being considered. Even if you are a guardian or conservator, the goal is for the individual to be the decision maker to the greatest extent they can be, and know it is their decision to make and that you are there to support them. Supported decision-making is a legal option that can be used formally or informally. A person might want to write down how they want their supporters to help them in an agreement, or they might just want to talk with their supporters without writing anything down. Supported decision-making can be seen as a reasonable accommodation for a person's disability under federal and state law, which means that it can be used in Connecticut and every state, even if the state doesn't have a law formally recognizing supported decision-making agreements. As we said, Connecticut just enacted a new law about supported decision-making that defines it. It also requires the Department of Education working with disability rights advocacy groups to develop a plain language online resource about adult decision-making options for students and parents, guardians, or surrogate parents of a child who is age 14 or older and needs special education services. The resource should include information like the right of the child and parent when the child reaches 18 years old under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It also should include information like alternatives to guardianship and conservatorship, including supported decision-making, powers of attorney, advance directives, and other decision-making alternatives. The law also has a plan for how the Department of Education will post and share this information. While the supported decision-making can be used in special education, here in Connecticut, it also can be used to make all kinds of decisions, from employment to healthcare to financial support, in all kinds of contexts. So what does using supported decision-making in Connecticut look like? There is not one answer to it. One size doesn't fit all. And SDM looks different for different people who have different support networks, different communication, and different strengths and needs. We have worked with people who have very formal SDM agreements with regular SDM team meetings and written agreement forms. And we have worked with people who use it informally by strategically using a release of information form and educating their providers on the person's decision-making rights. We have worked with people who have developmental disabilities, and we have worked with those who have mental health disabilities, brain injuries, dementia, and other disabilities. We have the capability of working with people with a variety of disabilities, challenges, and support needs, including people who use various communication methods. We have worked with people who have a strong network of family and friends to be part of their support network, and we have worked with people who rely more on professionals to support them. We heard a little bit earlier from Antonio and Mary about how Antonio's supporters helped him communicate his preferences and choices around employment. We're going to hear now from Nick, who's going to talk a little bit about how his sister has played an important role in his decision-making and how she helps him understand the consequences of certain decisions and take responsibility for them.
My sister, she was also a good another big important part of my life, which would come into decisions too. So she knows a lot. She knows too, like making the right choices and understanding the safety and healthy stuff, and like other, and there sometimes can be consequences too. Like if I don't understand this right and don't do it, then there will be some stuff I just need to accept like responsibly and just take a lot of full responsibility and just.
What's important to remember is that there are different ways to use and practice supported decision-making. Supported decision-making can be used for larger decisions or smaller decisions. Supporters don't make decisions for the people they support. Instead, they provide advice and guidance, and help someone access the supports and accommodations they need to make their own choices and preferences known. Supported decision-making can be easily paired with other legal tools in the decision-making support toolbox. The person using supported decision-making may decide to sign a release of information form that allows professionals, like their service providers, vocational rehabilitation counselors, or their school, to share otherwise private information about the person with their supporters. This helps supporters have the information they need to advise and help the person understand the choices and decisions they face. Common release of information forms include those related to protected healthcare information called HIPAA forms, and those related to confidential educational information called FERPA forms. The person using supported decision-making can also sign a special kind of power of attorney called a durable power of attorney. A durable power of attorney is a legal document that lets the person pick someone else to act for them for financial, business, or other legal purposes under certain circumstances. The person signing the power of attorney can put a starting date or event in the document that says when the person they trust can act for them. In doing so, the person can authorize a trusted supporter to handle certain financial, business, or legal matters, only if the person is no longer able to do so for themselves. In the meantime, while the person can still handle making their own decisions, they can use their supporters to help them understand the financial or other decisions that they face. Emily is a 32-year-old young professional who makes most of her decisions independently. She receives help in certain aspects of her life and has designated her parents to make decisions on her behalf in the event of an emergency. Here, Emily tells us more about why she and her supporters chose to use a power of attorney instead of conservatorship or guardianship.
My parents usually help me with like spreadsheets and like certain email type of stuff. If I need stuff on Microsoft Word, they help me with that, or Excel, or if I have problems with Zoom or Teams. My parents and I decided that way because we decided that that would be the best option because I would only need that level of help if I was deemed unable to completely make decisions for myself.
In Connecticut, a court may appoint a guardian for adults with intellectual disabilities who it determines are unable to care for their physical health or safety, or make decisions about all or some aspects of such care. Of course, many people with intellectual disabilities do not require a guardian to manage their daily life and can use other options, including supported decision-making or powers of attorney instead. The National Guardianship Association's position statement on guardianship, surrogate decision-making, and supported decision-making says that supported decision-making should be considered for a person before guardianship is imposed, and that the supported decision-making process should be incorporated as part of a guardianship, if guardianship is necessary. Every guardianship should be focused on the person and grounded in demonstrating respect for their dignity. Guardianship means that someone else is ultimately making the legal decision for the person. In its purest form, supported decision-making means the person is the one making the legal decision. So supported decision-making and guardianship are distinct concepts. That said, supported decision-making principles and involving the person in decision-making that impacts them can and should be incorporated into guardianship. Our guardian can and should promote a person's self-determination by including them in decision-making and respecting and advocating for their preferences and choices. Often, this is what many guardians strive to do. This approach is also supported by Connecticut's statute and case law around guardianship. As one federal court found, quote, guardianship does not completely divest an individual of the right to participate in decisions, end quote. Connecticut law requires a guardian to consult with the individual, and professional standards require the individual's opinion to be taken into account in making decisions, including those about community placements. In Connecticut, under certain circumstances, a court may appoint a conservator to oversee the financial or personal affairs of an adult who either does not have an intellectual disability or who has significant financial assets. That arrangement is called conservatorship. Connecticut's standard of practice for conservators support the idea that conservators should involve people they support in the decision-making process. For example, Standard 7 states that when making decisions on behalf of the conserved persons, the conservator is required, among other things, to encourage the person to participate in the decision-making process and follow the person's preferences unless doing so would cause substantial harm. The conservator is required to ask the conserved person what that person wants and arrange appropriate assistance if the person has difficulty expressing their preferences. If the person is unable to express current preferences, the conservator is required to determine what the person would want if the person could express them. In addition, Standard 9 requires conservators to provide people with the opportunity to exercise their individual rights and to assist and encourage people in maximizing independence and self-determination and in developing or regaining capacity to the maximum extent possible. All of these requirements support the idea that supported decision-making principles should continue to be used within conservatorships. We are going to see a clip now from Pam and Emma McKeever. While Pam is Emma's conservator, Pam talks about how she incorporates Emma into decision-making and respects Emma's decision. Let's listen in.
One of the ways that I help Emma to make decisions is to talk it through with her. And we talk about a lot of different options. We talk about ways to sort out our thoughts, her thoughts. I would say almost all of the time, Emma comes up with the final decision, except with regard to medical and finance stuff. In terms of employment, we might make a list of things and a way to maybe document what Emma's thinking about is we've made a lot of like audio tapes so that either it could be presented to someone else or Emma could listen back to what she's thinking about. We have, just a lot of lists, a lot of pros and cons. Sometimes we'll leave a discussion with a question and Emma will go and research it herself. And then we'll come back to the table and just talk about, okay, where do you think we should go with this? What are next steps? If I think something is really not a good idea, we come back to the table and talk about it again. I tend to present things in a way that it doesn't feel personal. We might go to, a piece of research or an article or an excerpt from a radio show or something like that so that Emma understands my point of view. But for the most part, other than medical and financial, Emma has been able to make some very important and very smart decisions. I want Emma to understand how smart she is, how mature she is, how independent she could be. And I want her to have the confidence to be, to make decisions that make her happy and keep her healthy and keep her successful, and also to help her to understand when she needs to ask for help, when a decision is too big to make it independently. And I see all of that in Emma as she gets older and matures, and I'm so proud of her for that. One of the things when we initially went to probate court is there's actually a clause in in our legal paperwork that states that Emma must be a part of every decision that is made. Emma knows if she has concerns, she can go direct to our probate judge. He made her that offer, and she knows that that's her right. I would certainly make that happen for her as her conservator. I would get her there. In terms of formal tools, I think I don't know that we use anything formally, but we do know that that clause is in her documentation, and we follow through with that as much as possible. Informally, we do, like I said before, a lot of the pros and cons list, a lot of research, a lot of talking, a lot of video recording, a lot of audio recording, discussions with other people, discussions with people with other points of view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, a few things to remember from this presentation. One, there are options other than guardianship or conservatorship, like supported decision-making. Number two, supported decision-making is recognized in law in Connecticut. And three, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to using supported decision-making. You can find helpful resources and links to learn more about supported decision-making on our website at disrightsct.org/SDM. That's disrightsct.org/SDM. Or on the Connecticut Supported Decision Making Coalition's webpage at ctsilc.org/supported-decision-making. This presentation was developed in collaboration with the Center for Public Representation. For more information, you can visit supporteddecisions.org or centerforpublicrep.org. Thank you for listening to this webinar. Social Security funded the creation of this presentation under a grant. Although Social Security reviewed this presentation for accuracy, it does not constitute an official Social Security communication. This communication is printed, published, or produced and disseminated at U.S. taxpayer expense. Again, thank you.